The murder of Lieutenant Colonel William Higgins in Lebanon renewed American fears of being held hostage. Behind the scenes, U.S. businessmen now are increasing their precautions to thwart potential terrorist attacks. Last year, American corporations spent about $40 million on security, and cashing in are a handful of bodyguard schools fashioned after the Secret Service. Their philosophy is it takes brains, not brawn, to do the job. The oldest and largest of these schools is Executive Security International, ESI, and their students spend a lot of time in the classroom.
This guy is much less of a threat than this one. And why? Would you?
Who are these people trying to figure out these pictures? They are former security guards, cops, prison guards, also PhD candidates, secretaries, systems engineers, restaurant managers, all looking for a career change, even a race car driver. Why is this red-faced man less dangerous?
I consider this a bluff, absolute indication that the guy is going to talk me to death. And why? Because the face gets red with blood, and it is not a reaction of a survival instinct. You know, when the body feels like it's under attack, what it does is shut the blood vessels down. So the face goes pale, and that's why this guy is scary. You had better take a step back.
But how much of what they learn in class do students remember in an actual situation? We tried to find out. This man is a real-life business executive who knew that we were filming in this restaurant as part of our report on ESI. He also knew that scattered among the customers were bodyguard trainees assigned to protect him. Can you guess who they are? How about this guy? What about the one in the red Hawaiian shirt? How about this woman? Or maybe this guy outside? If you chose this man, you were right. If you chose the woman, you were right again. But if you chose the guy in the red shirt, well, he's just a waiter. And the man outside? He was part of our plan. No one knew we had set up a kidnapping. He's the bad guy. He shot the bodyguard.
Did this seem real to you when you came out?
Yes, it did. I felt like I was being protected. They were all around me. I felt very comfortable. And I didn't know this was going to happen, by the way.
And that's the way it is in real life. In this case, his bodyguards failed.
In fact, you had promised me. I thought that these guys wanted to film people in a restaurant.
We do lie, don't we?
Well, you know, in your defense, you didn't lose your client. You just lost your life.
That's correct. Thank you, sir.
Let's go back and see what went wrong. Their biggest mistake? Nobody noticed the kidnapping.
What's the obvious giveaway? He's wearing a heavy jacket in weather like this to do what? Conceal a gun that's this long.
Yeah.
You know?
Bob Duggan runs ESI. He says his students left their client wide open while leaving the restaurant. The kidnapper shot the bodyguard here. If this had been for real, it would have been too late to throw himself between the executive and the killer. They walked their client right into the trap. The executive would have been kidnapped, maybe killed. It all could have been avoided if someone had checked outside the restaurant. That's called advance work. And that kind of thinking things through, that routine, must always be done.
The factor that is always against you is that nothing ever happens, ever, until the instant that it does, and it's over in less than a second and a half. So you live your whole life in utter boredom, waiting for the crisis to occur.
From his headquarters in Aspen, Colorado, Bob Duggan has been turning out executive protection experts, bodyguards, for corporate America since 1981. He started small that first year with only 30 students. This year, 120 paid $6,000 each for the 2-week course. Duggan has an unusual background. He is a martial arts expert.
Hitting here, hitting here.
He used to be a Marxist revolutionary who at one time lived in South America and robbed banks for his cause.
You were arrested at one point?
Yep, and deported several countries, tortured in one.
Have you ever killed anyone?
No. I was certainly willing to take up arms, and if someone would have died, it would have, you know, I guess I would have felt, you know, morally correct. Okay, shooter ready? Walk.
His dream of a Marxist utopia turned into a nightmare, and Duggan came home. home to the United States and capitalism. He found he could make a legitimate living from his revolutionary training.
It's not required that you only shoot 3 shots. Only required that you hit them.
Blank.
Even though they may never have to use a gun as a bodyguard, they have to be able to handle one before they can pass this course.
You run around with a gun that won't shoot.
Sorry.
Huh? Apologize to the bad guys.
You get mercenaries, gun enthusiasts.
The whole thought of training gunmen or people who are fascinated by guns is repulsive. It is not what this, again, it's not what this job is about. People don't survive armed assaults.
In fact, if a bodyguard has to draw his or her weapon, to some extent they fail.
They fail, but they probably will also die.
Experts say that about a third of the 3,000 terrorist attacks last year were aimed at business executives. So Duggan set up a series of training situations that mimicked real life. Here, his students are protecting a businesswoman from a terrorist attack.
I saw the tailman did not look behind him. I saw a fumble on a magazine.
The students who get good marks in these exercises could make starting salaries of at least $30,000 a year, and they'd be placed by ESI in companies like Johnson & Johnson and Apple Computer.
The duties of a bodyguard can sound exciting with the travel that some of them get to do. What are some of the drawbacks? It must be a downside.
Boring. You're always waiting for something to happen and it never happens.
You do at times have to do things like, say, would you run down to the store or pick up the laundry, or
Yep.
sometime you have to walk the family dog?
That, and if you're not careful, you'll end up the butler.
And most definitely, these trainees will end up the chauffeur. But Duggan says for a good reason.
85% of all kidnappings occur in or around the car.
Duggan set up his own course to teach defensive driving. Not your normal sort. His students learn to get their executives out of serious trouble.
You can't be as good as it is possible to be good in weapon training, driving, martial arts, any of that stuff. It still is not enough.
Before arriving in Aspen, the students have completed an extensive home study course to prepare them for the classroom. This is a picture of John Hinckley, seconds before he shot President Reagan.
That's the dead giveaway. The eyebrows are curled down.
They're learning to spot facial signs, what Duggan calls cues and tells.
He's about the 3rd row back in that crowd, and everybody in that group is smiling. And in the back is this glower of John Hinckley. You can see it, that expression, and it is hatred, more correctly anger. It's the pressing down of the eyebrows, pressing together of the lips. It doesn't matter how big the crowd is. You can see it. Of course, you have to be looking for it. If you're not looking for it,
You sort of wonder why they didn't see it.
until very recently, people in this field, the Secret Service, were not trained in identifying facial expressions.
The 1985 TWA hijacking is studied. Duggan teaches his class to understand terrorist behavior. In this case, he reminded the class that one hijacker had not made it onto the plane, so the others were nervous.
The stewardess noticed the sweating and the wringing in the hands and detected this fear, and she interpreted it as fear of flying. Now, if she had been trained, this might also be indicative of the fear of being caught. She could have gone to the air marshal and said, listen, these guys are acting a little bit peculiar. The whole thing might have played differently.
That took place in the Middle East. But could it happen here in the States?
Goodness, yes. Both left-wing and right-wing terrorist organizations, we've just rid ourselves of most of the members of the Aryan nations who had already targeted people like Henry Kissinger and Rothschild and Norman Lear, and they did, in fact, kill our radio announcer here in Denver, Colorado, simply because he was a Jew.
Because of that, Duggan set up this scenario. These students are checking out this primitive mock-up. It's supposed to be the home of their boss, a Jewish executive. They don't know it, but waiting in the back rooms are 2 ESI instructors dressed in camouflage, posing as Aryan Nation terrorists.
Okay, let's go.
The 2 men in the red shirts are bodyguards.
You seem to take extra care to make these scenarios seem as realistic as possible.
If you teach people in a sterile classroom environment, people will absorb only so much. You know, everyone knows that this is kind of role-playing, but their heart rates are beating tremendously. They feel the necessity of responding to what, to them, becomes a real situation.
All right, move out. Back here, take the barrel. Drop down.
This time, the terrorists prevailed. What did the bodyguards do wrong?
You were both focused this way and not down the hall. And what I want you to do is just assume the positions you were in and concentrate on that room again.
This class didn't fare well. 3 out of the 23 failed, and of the 20 who passed, Duggan says he would recommend only 7 of them for jobs protecting CEOs.
It's your partner that you see. Okay, so
I probably hired more ESI graduates than any other single source.
Kim Peterson is the bodyguard Duggan students want to be. Well-dressed, well-educated, he runs his own company and charges a basic rate of $800 a day plus expenses. Armed with the checklist, he's securing an airport for a client.
What is advance work?
Advance work involves sending an agent in advance of the arrival of a principal, of a protectee, to arrange the entirety of security. We'll go in and we'll run our antenna wires up so that we have radio communications. We'll set up portable security systems to make certain nobody can get into the suite. And at the same time, it means leaving 3x5 cards by telephones, not only in the bedroom, in the bathroom, so that he doesn't have to figure out how to make a domestic long-distance call.
In addition to being the butler and the chauffeur, now the bodyguard is the secretary, scheduling hotels, airports, and restaurants. But Peterson makes a good living working for people like Henry Kissinger and Alexander Haig.
You carry weapons in your line of work?
Where we can.
And you're licensed?
It's impossible to get a permit for every state in the United States and to carry weapons overseas in many countries. What we have to do is finesse that point. You can hire off-duty police officers and others to augment your detail, and oftentimes that's more satisfactory than carrying weapons yourself.
Have to fit together, and
the people who are making money running these bodyguard schools, training these people, do we have a situation where they're creating the perception that there really is a need out there when there really isn't a need?
I think the need is there. I think the need probably is greater than what ESI can even provide in graduates.
Any idea what the limits are? I mean, how big can it get?
One need only look at the New York Times or the Washington Post and see the kind of crimes that are being committed against executives in Europe to see that the need is real.